developing happiness agenda in Dubai. He also works on different initiatives in UAE, such as Dubai Now, UAE Pass, Dubai Pulse data platform, and the happiness meter. And we are keen and eager to hear from him on his keynote speech. It's going to be on digitalizing life in Dubai, digital technology working for people. So welcome, Dr. Ali Al-Asawi.
Thank you very much. I'd like to first of all thank you everyone for the opportunity to present here. It's lovely to be amongst you all. I am hoping to learn a lot in this engagement. I've been asked to share our experience in Dubai in terms of what our version of a digital city or smart city, which is obviously something that is relevant to this conference. So without further ado, I'll jump straight into the presentation. I need to share this document. Allow me 1 second before I... Hopefully you're able to see that. Let me know when you can.
It's coming. Yes, we can see it.
All right, wonderful. Okay. So the whole presentation is going to be talking about what it means to experience or to create the experience, for that matter, in a digital city, and specifically for us in Dubai, what has that meant? But before we sort of go any further, it's useful to consider some of the history behind this. Obviously, the idea of digital city or smart city or an e-city has been around for a while, and Dubai's journey started, in fact, in 2000 with the e-government initiative, and it specifically took a sort of strong turn when His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum announced that he wanted to make sure that all of the government services are available on their mobile, and that picture is quite an iconic picture for all of us. And then the idea of a Smart Dubai initiative came about, and then the Smart Dubai office was formed, and the Dubai Data Establishment was established with the idea of making sure that data has got a strong governance around it and an ethos to make sure we get the most value out of it. And so on, the journey continues until today. We have Digital Dubai, an authority entrusted to see the overarching digital transformation of Dubai towards a very much bright future, inshallah, as part of the Dubai Plan 2030. So to emphasize this point, His Highness says that he wants it about digitalizing life in Dubai, not digitalizing Dubai government services. So it's really quite an important distinction that he is trying to make, which is to say our effort is actually about the city as a whole rather than the government. So what is Digital Dubai as an organization? It's basically is an overarching organization. So it is an entity in its own right, or authority, I should say. But within it, it has these four sub-entities, which are Smart Dubai Government, and the focus there is more about the enabling technology, whereas Dubai Data is an organization that's looking after the Dubai Data Law, which I'll mention later on in more detail. And there's, of course, Dubai Statistics Center, which collects and curates data from all sources around the city. And, of course, the Dubai Electronic Security Center, making sure everything that we do is, in fact, secure. So that is what we are as an organization. What the mandate is for DDA, as we call it, Dubai Digital Authority, is to make sure that we've got a digital government, a digital economy, a digital society, digital city infrastructure. Note the emphasis here is on city again, and digital data and statistics, digital skills, and digital security. So these are the foci, if you like, of what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, digital skills is an important aspect there, because without the right skills in the digital city, the economy is not going to grow, and people are not going to be able to take advantage of the digital technology. So it's really quite important to see that holistic picture as part of our mandate. And our roles, that we have 4 key roles, which is the enabler, the operator, and the regulator, and the leader, in fact, in all digital things. So, for example, we are a regulator in the sense that we need to have an oversight of the regulation, and in fact actually propose regulations for the government to put through. So it really is a wide role that we are taking on. So, for example, in the early days, it was important to look at the efficiencies that are born in the government, or that actually could be created by creating the GRP, or Government Resource Establishment Planning, similar to ERP that you may know of. So this is a system that is government-wide, serving 71,000 employees, 70 government entities, with significant savings, as you can see, of 4.3 billion AED dirhams, UAE dirhams. And the idea is to make sure that the technologies which are repeated in all these organizations are in fact centralized and shared. And this is exactly what GRP does. But then, of course, we can sort of grow into a wider remit to say, okay, well, how can we make sure all processes in the city, notice actually what I'm talking about here, all different parts of the experience in the city. So making sure that nobody is asked to or given any paper to pass around in terms of processes involved in living in the city. And this, in fact, actually what with Dubai paperless strategy was all about. We had the deadline of 12/12/2021 to make sure no paper is passed around as a document that is required or passed around by people conducting government business in the city. And that, in fact, alhamdulillah, we were able to reach. So Dubai now, no requirement for paper in government processes. Then we see this experience when people go to cities, they see sort of a deluge of apps and websites, and each one is different looking, different experience, different login procedure, and how do you even get the login, authentication and password keeping and so on. So that really is a very messy experience. So how could we then turn that into much more coherent and singular experience? And that, in fact, actually is what Dubai Now is. Dubai Now, single point, essentially a single experience for 130 plus services in the city. And in fact, we are very proud to say that we won 10 awards with this project. And there are more than 30 entities, in fact, providing their services through that one singular portal. And I'll remind you of that picture of His Highness pointing at that one phone. And in fact, actually, we are trying towards this, goal. Of course, in order to provide that economy in the city, you need investors, and there is, in fact, yet another initiative here to make the experience of investing in Dubai very much a smooth and digital experience. And Invest in Dubai is a portal that allows people very easy access to create their businesses and, in fact, invest in Dubai, literally invest in Dubai. But if you had all this stuff, you still could end up with a plethora of authentication mechanisms. So UAE Pass was a project that we collaborated with the Telecoms and Digital Regulation Authority, which is a UAE-wide organization, as well as Abu Dhabi Digital Authority, to create this UAE Pass app, if you like, but actually all it is a mobile authentication mechanism. So it's a digital identity. The same platform or the same device actually allows people to exchange digital signatures, meaning that the digital signature of a document that I put through this method is accepted by other organizations. And this particular platform or digital identity is accepted in over 7,000 the UAE government services. and also private services. So it really is UAE wide. Just get UAE pass and you're automatically in to many places. But of course, then in all this effort, you will be generating a lot of data and making sure that there is a well thought through holistic data ecosystem is important. We all know the importance of making sure data safety is there and ethics around it and so on, but also trying to create value out of that. So it's not just governance that's important for making sure this ecosystem is good. It's not only the data infrastructure or the management of the ecosystem itself, but also making sure that value genuinely is created out of that data, or these data, I should say, to make sure that the benefits of having a digital city are realized even more. And in this way, the Dubai Data Establishment ensures the application of the Dubai Data Law, which was something I mentioned earlier. At the establishment of Dubai Data Establishment, the data law was also given to it as a custodian of that law. And of course, Dubai Data also manages policies around data, standards, as well as strategy in terms of engaging with the private sector. And you could imagine you will need, of course, a platform to orchestrate and manage these data, and Dubai Pulse is our version of that. And it's actually much more than that. It's not just a repository for data. It's also about a place for holding and managing other platforms such as IoTs and so on. So this is a central place for us to manage the data in Dubai. But at the beginning, I also mentioned this business of experiencing the city, but what does it mean to actually engineer the experience? Well, what is even working on creating that positive experience in the city even mean? For us, obviously, we have a process around this. So it starts with making sure that we're attending to people's needs, and we do that in various ways. We can ask them. We can actually find out what those needs are through strategic alignment with other initiatives around the city. But whichever way, we start with people's needs or some kind of a remit, and we go through that design process, which is a classic way of iteration around a design, testing and evaluating it. We go through creating the prototypes, giving that to the development and so on. So I won't go through this diagram, but the idea there is it is very much a standard, what you'd expect from a best practice design practice. This email thing keeps dinging at me. What we then do, of course, after that is look at the research methods. These are ones that, again, you'd expect in any state-of-the-art CX practice. And we've been doing this for a long time, actually. I'll give you an idea of the history behind it. But we really do cover the whole remit of qualitative and quantitative methods, ranging from in-depth interviews, one-to-one, or even eye tracking. It just depends on the kind of question. But we do engage in these proper methods, and we have proper ways of analyzing these data. And the user research, again, has all sorts of different kinds of tools and methodologies, be it in bespoke labs or even out in the field. We've also done some ethnographic work when required. So it really is the whole gamut. The CX lab started off way back when, and imagine what this is about. This is actually a CX lab in the heart of government in 2014. So we really were doing what we believe to be up there with the rest of the world in terms of doing the right things, as far as the processes and practices to making sure that the experiences that we delivered are consistent with people's needs. And we had a purpose-built lab with the full features, including right now we've got the observation room. So it really is exactly what you'd expect. We have it. The tools around the lab, the research thing. So this is an example of what we did for Dubai Now. We had 180 users through 180 hours doing a very much in-depth research on what it is they need. And I believe it was something like 400 users or so we used for card sorting to create a similarity matrix that allows us to create the information architecture around the application that we're doing to make sure that information architecture gives an intuitive experience. So this is an example of what we are doing to make sure when we say we are trying to make sure the experience is a good one in the city, we are doing it in this way. So we know that the experience is a good one because we've asked the people what they wanted and they co-created this experience with us, in fact. And of course, when you get a lot of findings, you can structure these findings in some very systematic way so that you can prioritize them to making sure that issues that are high severity or high priority are addressed first and so on. So the development team know what to work on first to make sure what they're doing is actually quite efficient. And of course, you could expect that the design process that we employ in-house, it goes from concept to prototype to visual design. All of this is done inside our organization. So, of course, the designs evolve. And what you see of Dubai Now, and in fact, if you ever are visiting us in Dubai, I would very much encourage you to download and use Dubai Now because it also has some services suitable for visitors. So you can see there that evolution of the app, and in the development team, we've got this component library, so that goes to cover literally the minutiae of the interface to make sure that we are reusing components. So it's all about efficiency, not just the efficiency of the user, but the efficiency of the development team and the design team. So we go through iterations and version control of the component library. So what we are doing is actually as efficient as possible. And this goes for all our development. This is, I'm using Dubai Now, of course, here as an example, but we really do this, conduct this process and follow these processes for all of our applications and technology. So this is just an example for you. So what's this about? At the end of the day, we have been trying to do the right things right, and this has been vindicated, if you like, in the way that Dubai has been billed as a leader in the field. So we're ranked #1 regionally and 16 globally for ease of doing business. This is actually quite an important thing because ultimately it is trying to grow the economy. That's one of our jobs here at the government, but also making sure that the quality of life is a good one. Nonetheless, having the ability to access business license in under 15 minutes. This is a major achievement for us to make sure that the economy is really growing at the best rate possible. So we've got, because we've been doing all these things, we've been attracting Fortune 500 companies who choose Dubai as their regional headquarters. This is something we're very proud of course. And we even got a unicorn in Dubai. And then ultimately, if it isn't safe, then it's not going to drive investment towards Dubai. And sure enough, we are well ranked in terms of safety. And of course, people will come, and hopefully you will come as well to Dubai to visit us, especially now that we've got the Expo 2020 event, which is a worldwide event. I very much encourage you to visit that one. So the idea here is that what we've been doing in the way that we've been doing that has been actually driving success in Dubai. But ultimately, this has given us some really hot spots in terms of e-government survey. We're #1 in the United Nations. We're best international airport. Quality of living #1 ranked regionally. So these things not only affect the way that we do these things, not only affect the economic value, but also affect the quality of life directly. Global Cities Index, that's a major one. So this is how we do, and this is the result of digital Dubai in real terms, and in a way that actually affects people's lives. So all of this is actually accentuated by His Highness's statement to say that the size of our digital economy exceeds 100 billion dirhams today. And we aim to double this number in 2 years, inshallah. So we are serious and we are doing it, alhamdulillah. And I invite you all, if you've got any questions, I would be very glad to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali, for very inspiring speech. Lots of ideas and points raised. Some of them may trigger some discussion, and I open the floor to questions. Got Muhammad Dulaimi, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. Very interesting and inspiring presentation. In your presentation, two things you mentioned as your objective within Digital Dubai Authority is improving quality of life and growing the business. Mashallah, you seem your organization is driving and developing the digital solutions and tools. To what extent you've been successful in taking business with you? To what extent every sector of society is able to embrace this digital world?
I can't emphasize enough the point about making sure that all sectors of society are addressed in what we are doing. The reason why you saw that figure of 180 users, literally this was 180 individuals covered with sitting with each individual in 1 hour, asking about their needs. So it's not only the different segments of societies, but there's different sectors. So within each sector, there are different needs. What I don't want to do is speak out of turn about our upcoming strategy, but you will see soon, inshallah, where these issues are covered really head on. But we've already been doing that in the past. It's not like it's a new idea to make sure all sectors are covered. I can mention, for example, the tourism sector is a very important one for us. The trade sector is very important. The construction sector, I can go on. I mean, each one of those is pivotal to the success of Dubai. So we have been doing a lot of work in terms of digitally enabling each one of those. So, UAE Pass signature that I mentioned earlier, that's all about making sure the exchange of contracts, so therefore that's the legal sector, is enabled digitally, to making sure that these transactions can happen seamlessly. But of course, contracts are cross-cutting. So sometimes one of these sectors are cross-cutting across many sectors. So little things like that, it really doesn't take much. UAE Pass is such a magic thing. It has enabled so much, just that one single thing, which allows people that single user digital identity to be able to access many services throughout the whole country, not just Dubai, by the way, because obviously we do and operate on the scale of Dubai, but we also have to consider the wider scope as well.
But when you think about digital literacy, this is, I raised this issue because I had a student years ago in Dubai where the ministry developed an app for renewing fishermen's licenses.
Right.
And the use of it was zero. They want to turn up to the office with their document and say, here it is, renew it for me.
Okay, so let me, actually, the reason I laugh is because it reminded me of the mantra. While we were going through the design of UAE Pass, I used to say to the team, all the screens that we're doing, every single screen has to pass the Baker test. بالعربي يسميها الخباز. The baker has to be able to understand what it is that we're providing. If the baker doesn't understand, we have failed. So don't pitch the design, and we really religiously try to make sure it was not pitched at the digital illiterate per se, but at that big base of the pyramid of society. Because if you don't address those, you have not got an economy that's digitally enabled. You've just got an elite, but that's not an economy.
Thank you.
So very much, and like I say, it made me laugh because this is a particular point that I made with the team when we were going through the design.
Right. Any more questions, or shall I also pose a question?
Of course, yeah.
You mentioned two terms, digital society, and also the statement by His Royal Highness, digital life.
Yes.
If you can elaborate a little bit about that, because we had also discussion this morning about the UK National Digital Twin keynote speech by Mark earlier, and we touched upon the people issue, but there are some sensitivities and issues there in UK about that. So if you can elaborate about the statement of a digital life and digital society, please.
Right. So the issue with regards to, I think what you're getting at is perhaps around the ethics of data use. And that is something that is very much in our sights, and we've been doing work around this in the Dubai Data Establishment area of Digital Dubai Authority. So we have had a set of principles for AI governance that we published, and of course ethical guidelines for data exchange. So not only are we paying attention to actually creating value by providing these services, I mean, the idea behind getting rid of this and making that instead, this is actually about quality of life directly. But if you don't do that in a safe and ethical way, then you can create problems later on down the line in terms of safety. So the concept of digital well-being, you mentioned that in the introduction, this is something that we are also paying attention to at the scale of the whole of the UAE. And one of the aspects of digital well-being, ensuring that people's safety and security in their digital life is paramount, meaning that we need to make sure not only can they get these services, but if these services or these data are breached, then you end up with a counterproductive or even a dangerous situation. So we really do take a lot of attention, serious attention to this issue of making sure that digital technology is provided to the citizens and the visitors of Dubai while making it safe for them. So it's a balance, and we're on the case, definitely. It's not a by the way.
Okay, thank you. Good points. Any more questions or comments from the audience? Right. Thank you very much, Ali, for a very incredible speech, and it will add a lot of value to this conference, hopefully, and also making future agenda in this knowledge domain and practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for hosting us. I appreciate that very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Right. Our next keynote speaker, Professor Ghassan Awad. Ghassan is the president of Applied Science University. Before that, he was, while he was in UK, he was the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Salford University. He led research there in the construction sector and the IT application in construction sector, big research group there with huge funding from the UK government. And he published so many articles and books and chapter of books. He is a keynote speaker in so many conferences around the world, addressing issues facing the construction industry. We are really grateful having him with us this evening to deliver his keynote speech on the construction sector post-COVID-19, a leadership perspective. The floor is yours, Ghassan.
Thank you, Dr. Taha. And thank you, Professor Mohammed, as well, for the invitation. And many thanks to the CIB and my good friend, Don Wood, who's in the audience as well. And I see some familiar names in the audience, Professor Anita Serich and Professor Chris Goes, which I have not seen for a while. And there are so many others maybe, but that's what I could see. I'm going to talk about leadership, in fact, even though the conference is all about smart building and the rest. And we have, I've very much enjoyed, in fact, listening to Dr. Ali. And smart leadership produced smart buildings and digital nations, and they know how to deal with COVID as well. So it's all about leadership, but I want to look at the construction sector post-COVID-19 and look at it from a leadership perspective. Of course, I was past president of the Charter Institute of Building, and I'm very proud of this title. What I will do, I will provide some context maybe, and then talk about leadership styles and maybe leadership post-COVID-19, and end up with some concluding word. If I prepared my presentation to be presented in Dubai, and that's why I had the UAE flag and Bahrain flag, in fact. But unfortunately, it turned up to be a virtual conference, and I tend to start with something. When it was a physical conference, I would have asked the question, guess what's this product? We have seen, Dr. Ali, how things have been transformed in Dubai, but when I looked at this picture, I didn't know what was the product at the end of the day. I don't know whether somebody is clever enough to tell me what would be that product, which was in 1679, it looked like this, then in 1864, and then in 2012. It's a pressure cooker, which shows how things could be developed by leaders to a large extent. And if somebody is interested in a certain product, they work day and night. This was before COVID-19 for sure. They may have had some pandemic at that stage during these years. So when we look at the construction industry post-COVID-19, what are the issues which could face our industry? Of course, cash flow is a big issue for sure. Health and safety, we know that the industry worldwide have suffered because of the pandemic. Some projects have been delayed, supply of materials and products because of flights and so on, and logistics. Mental health has become a major issue for our industry. The use of technology, everybody is talking now about artificial intelligence and cloud computing and virtual reality and augmented reality. These have been around for years. AI has been around since 1950s, but everybody is talking about it now because people have been working remotely. They want to minimize maybe presence on site. Maybe a lot of people will be talking about modular now construction. They will say modular construction will become very popular. In the 70s and 60s, it was popular. So technology could really influence what we are doing. There will be a lot of issues around supply chain and the issue of virtual organizations. We have started to do these virtual conferences, and virtual organizations will happen across the globe now because of the pandemic. But really, what's really important is the issue of leadership and management. Can we lead projects? Can we lead institutions? Can we lead students in our universities the same way we led them before COVID? I doubt it very much. So actions have to be taken, and of course, I try to find some solutions. So in terms of cash flow, there will be some tools to perform proper simulation. Health and safety directives will need to change to take into account crisis. COVID-19 may not be the last pandemic. There could be more. And delayed project, we need to look at the mobilization of extra resources, materials and products just in time because of what happened. Mental health, new guidelines for sure. The whole world has been affected, and people would feel mental health after when the COVID-19 is over. People would know that people have been living in isolation, on their own, struggling, etc. Use of technology, we covered what could be in the future. Supply chain, we may need a new model. Virtual organization needs policies and procedures. Leadership and management will need new leadership styles, for sure. So construction post-COVID-19, there will be a lot of issues related to creating capacity. People have to deal with a completely different world. COVID-19 has transformed our world. We need the proper infrastructure, being IT or any other logistics. Risk assessment, it has to be performed really properly. And I mean, to be honest, as universities or companies, we have failed in terms of, at least you cannot predict the future, but you can get prepared for it. If there were proper maybe futurology, future studies, foresight studies, we could have done better maybe in terms of dealing with the pandemic. There will be a need for new national strategies. We heard this morning from our colleagues talking about national strategy, but there will be a need for other maybe national strategies. In terms of our research and curriculum, we'll need to change. We need to perform a lot of scenario planning now to see various scenarios, what could happen next. Support from professional bodies like my own institute, the Chartered Institute Building, they can play a major role in providing support and mentoring and training and the rest. And international collaboration, we can see now, Dr. Ali is in Dubai, I am in Bahrain, a lot of people across the globe listening to a presentation, different time zones and so on. So it's very, very important for us to work together. We need support from government, for sure. We have seen what Dr. Ali presented to us when you have great leaders and great governments, what you can achieve. And of course, the regulations will need to change, for sure. So what could shape our future? Of course, a global environmental change. We have seen the summit in Glasgow about climate change, and the new summits will be in Cairo and in Egypt and in the UAE. Financial frameworks will be different because the world have lost trillions of dollars. Who's going to pay for it? For sure. Somebody has to pay for it. So there will be new financial frameworks. We have seen power shift in terms of economic activities from west to east. Demographic change, you see elderly generations in the west, youth in the east, in the Middle East in particular. Knowledge generation and education post-COVID-19 will be different. We may move from the traditional learning model into a hybrid model or online model. Economic oil prices, we have seen a very serious decline, and they have gone up and they may go down. This would affect everything we are doing. Technological progress, we spoke about new technologies and the fourth industrial revolution. We have moved from agricultural society to industrial to knowledge economy, and now everybody is talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and this would involve AI, cloud computing, Internet of Things, virtual reality. And we have to realize national priorities now, including health, for sure, is going to be a priority for most nations. Finance, because of the financial restrictions and decline and some recessions in some nations. The environment, with issues of climate change and energy consumption. And education and research, especially the STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and math. All of these would affect construction operation, would affect the leadership of construction. But we have to be still optimistic. I mean, we have seen buildings produced by our construction and design professionals across the globe, which are amazing. And we should be proud of our industry. Unfortunately, when I was talking about foresight and at least preparing for the future, do you know what's the name of this company? This is Kodak. I remember when I was a kid, we used to go and buy film, and it could be something else, but we say Kodak. Kodak have gone bankrupt because they couldn't predict the digital revolution. They thought everybody will go and process pictures traditional way, and they were not prepared for it. And we have to be prepared for the future. If you look what's happened in Bahrain, I'm glad I listened to Dr. Ali, and he showed us what happened in Dubai. Even in terms of the infrastructure, 40 years ago, you cannot recognize all of these, in fact. If you look at Dubai, this is Sheikh Zayed Road on the top left. And look at Sheikh Zayed Road now in Dubai, Dr. Ali, you cannot recognize it. And this is because when you have great leaders doing great jobs, this is something Bahrain, the late Abdullah Nas, I mean, he established the university in collaboration with Professor Ibn Khaja. And this guy was 15 years old when he went to Saudi Arabia to work. And then he established a construction empire. He had 10,000 employees in Bahrain and in the region. Of course, because of the great leadership. But all those guys, they had these great leaderships before COVID-19. And during COVID-19, when you see the number of cases of COVID now in the UAE or in Bahrain, they have gone down. They have managed to vaccinate most people. So the leadership in one aspect applies to digital technologies, to health, to construction. I mean, during the pandemic in Bahrain, you see construction normal. People are building new projects, the same in Dubai. And this is, I think, because of smart leadership. And I put here some maybe statements about you don't lead by pointing and telling people some place to go. You lead by doing that great and making a case. You lead by example. And you try to look at some definitions of leadership codes. Do they still apply? I don't know what leadership is. You cannot touch it. You cannot feel it. It's not tangible. But I do know this. You recognize when I see it. I see straight away. I listen to Dr. Ali now. I think he's a leader. Straight away. I don't need to wait and I'll go and Google him now and prove to myself. But this is true. So leaders, and the issue whether they are born or made becomes a very, very big issue. Of course, there are 400 definitions of leadership. I bet after COVID, there will be 800 maybe. People will say, how do we manage? How do we lead people? How do we handle mental health? Can we afford to treat people the same way we treated them before COVID? No, I don't think we can. Because of various issues, because of trust. My good friend, Professor Anita Serish, would love the word trust. Trust would become really vital, and you are doing your business remotely. How can you trust somebody when you don't see them even? So it's very, very hard. So for me, the 5 ingredients of success that must come together are just leadership, but you need innovation to be associated with it. You need quality. Quality should be at the heart. You need the technical competence. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the passion to make things happen, you cannot achieve much. So just quickly, some theories, I want to see if they still apply, in fact. Of course, there are the great man theories, whether leaders are born or made. There are behavioral theories, situational theories, contingency theories, transactional theory. I don't know. Contingency theory, does it apply now because COVID-19? Do they still apply, the other ones, transformational, inspirational, etc.? So there may be a new style of leadership because of COVID-19. So some people say leaders aren't born, they are made, and they are made just like anything else. You can train them. There are some theories which says leaders are born. The great man theory says leaders are born, not made. When you are born, you have some trait for leadership, early trait. So you can have physical attributes, personality, charisma, social skills, soft skills, intelligence, and sights, and so on. And then this makes you born or made. And some leaders are born with some traits. Very, very important for us to understand it post-COVID-19. And the leadership styles could be the autocratic, democratic, or laissez-faire. It's working. Why should you change it? I don't think these leadership styles may apply in the future. In fact, there will be a need for a different type of leadership, whether it's transactional, transformational, or inspirational. I think great leaders, for sure, they are inspirational, but this time they are inspirational and there is the COVID element. So when you look at life before, during, and after COVID and compare, at least from a university point of view, before COVID, traditional teaching and learning, we teach on campus. During COVID, online teaching and learning. Now, post-COVID, it will become blended. So even teaching and learning will not be the same one. It will be different. Before COVID, social bonding, at least in the Middle East, we used to like to hug each other and kiss each other and bond together. Now, during COVID, has become social distancing. I bet after COVID now, new social habits. I don't think we like it that much in the Middle East when somebody put their hand to shake hands with you now. Is that true, Dr. Ali, or not? It is true. We will have new social habits, for sure. When we look at the environment, construction, pollution was high before. It was low during COVID. And I think pollution post-COVID will be controlled because a lot of activity could take place from home, and new working practices and new models for construction and so on. Before COVID, we were obsessed with brands and luxurious lifestyle. During COVID, we kept low profile because we couldn't show off anyway. We are at home. And I think after COVID, there will be a balanced lifestyle. So COVID will have a lot of impact on our lifestyle. And this will impact us, no question about it. We asked our colleagues in the university about life after Corona with contribution from 43 colleagues, in fact. And where would be the impact? The impact will be, part of it will be economic, part of it will be environmental, part will be health related, part will be in education, a part will be in terms of technology. And you can see the economic impact. We have 51 people who mentioned it, so it was repeated by more than one person. It showed that there will be economic implications because of COVID. This will have a lot of impact on construction operations across the globe. In our part of the world, we may have done well, but there are some parts of the world that just couldn't afford to do it because of reduction in funds, because of cash flow issues, and so on. So educational issues will be affected. There will be a lot of impact on universities, and you will see people moving more towards hybrid learning models. Social activity, social distancing, social habits, 75 occurrences. So it showed that life after COVID will be completely different. So maybe new leadership styles are needed post-COVID-19. I tried to maybe compare what happened before COVID and during COVID. So before COVID, everything was based on competition. During COVID, because everybody is fearing for their life, they are worried, there were a lot of collaboration, in fact. Before COVID, it was mainly sympathy. You sympathize with somebody. During COVID, it was empathy. I mean, when our students, we had virtual meetings with them, they say, we are missing you. We say, we are missing you too. And they believe us because we are this empathy now. We are living exactly the same experience. Empathy is when you live the experience of somebody, not just sympathizing with them. Before, things were based on instruction. Now it's based on communication. Before it's compliance. Now it's based on trust. And that's why I mentioned my good friend, Professor Anita Zerich, because she did a lot of work on trust. And this is really much more needed now. Toughness before, compassion. I'm not going to go through them. I'm more than happy to share the presentation for our two chairs. And before COVID, the style was traditional, and now it's transformational. It has to be inspirational. Inspirational in a way that you need to inspire the next generation who have been suffering mental health and so on. Some of the slides I used before, I share some of them from my good friend, Professor Mingson, who used to use them in the past, in fact. When you look at COVID once again, or leadership before COVID, appearance and etiquette before, the brand and etc. Now it's all about professionalism. Before it was about behaviors, now it's about achievements. Before it was resistance to change, and now openness to change, because people have to change. You have no choice but to go and teach online. Before, if we did it before COVID, we couldn't have convinced the student to attend. Now they are there. Before it was based on experience, and now it's based on wisdom. As I said, you can compare them. I spent ages comparing self-interest here, loyalty there, reliance on mind, reliance on heart during COVID, and so on. So this is system-centered, this is people-centered. So you can look at them in your spare time and check them in order not to spend more time. So how to become a leader post-COVID? You have to have a vision, you have to have a clear target, you have to lead by example, you have to have empathy, you have to be decisive at the same time, you empower your team, you have presence, you join influential committees, you act as a leader, you have passion, and so on. We mentioned all of them, and these will become very, very important post-COVID-19. So great leaders should have the following core values. We all know: clear vision, believe in quality, personality, promotion of excellence, loyalty, faith in his and her own people, irrespective of color, gender, race, religion, social status, and maybe sense of humor. Great leaders, you tend to have some sense of humor, not being bored. And great leaders are multipliers. They are not the diminishers. This work was done some years back, in fact, and I love it because great leaders are the talent magnet, they are the liberator, the challenger, the debate maker, the investor in time and money and resources. The diminishers are the empire building. I want to build my own empire. I want to be the tyrant. I know it all. I know how to make tea and coffee in the office. The decision maker, everything has to come to me, and the micromanager. Those are the failing leaders. Take my word for this one. We don't need them in construction. So we don't need the boss. We need the leader. And we need to understand the national cultures and contexts, because power distance in some nations is high. It relies mainly on individualism, not collectivism, masculinity versus femininity. And this is great work by the Hofstede model, which is important to compare nations in terms of what leadership style is appropriate for it. And we have to change. There's no question about it. This is the Kotter change management model, the 8 phases. Establish a sense of urgency. We applied it now in our teaching. We said if we don't teach online, we cannot teach our students. So there's a sense of urgency. We create a coalition between the staff, the students, the alumni, etc., in order to be able to run the business. So change happens when you have a sense of urgency. And this is just few quotes as well about leadership. And he who has never learned to obey cannot be a good commander, for sure. So you need to lead by example. And you cannot do what I can do. I can do whatever you can do. Together, we can do great things. Mother Teresa, it's very, very important to be working together. Now, some very, very last few slides I still have. I mean, new innovation in the construction industry will become popular because people are desperate for innovation. In terms of technology, the use of drones, the use of 3D printing, BIM, we have a lot of today about BIM, solar roads, smart highways, smart buildings, and so on, is going to be popular. Cash flow, progress measurement on site, we have seen it. This is just a promotion for a book I wrote some years back on constructing the future, ND modeling. And we try to address some of these issues in terms of an n-dimensional model. We felt the word is not three-dimensional, it's not four-dimensional, it's n-dimensional. And any dimension could be added, like the pandemic was a new dimension. We did not think about it before, but it's important to do the modeling for a pandemic as well. But unfortunately, the big dilemma why some innovation is not adopted by our industry, because of resistance to change. When we said post-COVID, we have to change, and poor leadership. Leadership is essential for us in order to be able to cope with what's happening after COVID. We need to change our curriculum. We are still teaching traditional subjects. We have to teach new subjects. We have to teach subjects related to crisis, pandemic, how to be on your own, mental health, and so on. And schools will need to change as well. And we have to find integrated solutions from now on. You need the IT, you need the process, you need the capacity, but you need as well the innovative leaders to be able to cope with construction post-COVID-19. The right way, we have to think, plan, do, reflect, evaluate, learn, and plan better, and not the wrong way to do, think. And you dig a trench, then you realize you should put the water pipes, and you didn't put the telecommunication pipes. You dig it again, and it doesn't work this way. Again, in our industry, and we tend to do this quite often. So failing to plan is planning to fail. And I want just to mention this one because I really like the story here. There was a boss who wanted a toaster. He asked a doer and a talker to do it for him. The doer went home, designed the toaster, manufactured it, brought it in the morning to the boss, said, "Boss, here is the toaster." The boss plugged it in, put some bread, he got it. He was so happy, he wanted toasted bread. The talker went, disappeared for 20 years and came back with big designs to the boss. Said to him, "Look, boss, I have designed this toaster for you. You can use it as a toaster, you can use it as a hair dryer, you can use it as a coffee machine." And the boss decided to jail the talker because he just wanted a toaster. And we tend to spend our time on bureaucratic issues, which doesn't help our industry at all. So the brief is clear, just go and do it. Let's not go and change the brief. And this is, once again, is one of the very last slides. Happiness is a state of mind, so we have to be happy. And look at the state of the #1 winner. He's confused by the #3, who's very, very happy to be third. And he confused the winner, who's #1. So I think it's a lesson for us to be happy in doing what we are doing. And to conclude, I think leadership in post-COVID-19 will be different. There's no question about it. There will be different leadership styles, and you will see it. When COVID-19 is over, you will see a lot of mental health cases. It will affect the way we do things. I think the construction sector will be in a power position post-COVID-19 because there had been some decline in activities across the globe, and change is happening. There's no question about it. It's going to happen. Things will be based around new models, new leadership styles, and once again, smart leaders create smart technologies, create a health environment where a pandemic could disappear for all of us. I'd like to thank all of you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ghassan, for an amazing talk, linking different aspects and issues together with the leadership in the heart of it. We really appreciating your contribution here to the conference.
Sure.
I open the floor for questions or comments. Let me start with a comment and a question. You mentioned the impact of leadership, and there is no doubt everybody agrees on that. But if we look at what happened to different companies, global ones or small, medium SMEs, and what happened to some of them completely collapsed and they went bankrupt, some of them survived. And this is not in the construction industry only, on other industries and sectors as well. Obviously, pre and post pandemic, there are so many different factors affecting this kind of situations for organizations. But if we want to take the leadership as a factor, how do you weight that factor if we compare different companies who some of them went bankrupt and some of them survived and looking for the future? So what is the weight of leadership as a factor in that?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Dr. Taha. It's a very good question. And of course, leadership is all about envisioning, seeing what's happening next, and having your eyes on the horizon. And some people have failed to do this. And those are the diminishers. I refer to them in my presentation. When you are, I mean, we have seen companies where they have applied the top-down approach and they have failed immensely. And when they went for the flat management structure, and they have many companies in the UK, when I was in the UK, I've seen them flourishing because you need to empower your people. Those are the people who are going to do the job for you. You cannot have a just dictatorial approach all the time, do this, don't do that, etc. It doesn't work this time. So great leaders, believe me, they know what's happening on the ground. They lead by example to a large extent. When I was Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research at Salford University, if I didn't bid for money and publish papers and arrange conferences, the people in the university will say, if the guy who's leading research doesn't do research, how do we trust that we should do research in the university? So leading by example, having your eyes on the horizon, adopting more of a flat management, having empathy, not just sympathy. It doesn't work this way. That's why I put, if you look at the traits I put for leadership during COVID, this is the type of style, values, which could help any organization across the globe. Take more. The leaders have to be decisive, no question about it. You have to have KPIs. You have to have plans. But if you don't plan properly, I mentioned it before, you dig the trench, you put the telecommunication, then you realize, oh my God, well, we should dig it again now. We need to put the electricity cables or whatever. It doesn't work this way. So a lack of planning, lack of visioning, style, top-down, very autocratic, etc. Some organization that doesn't help them at all. I hope this answered my question.
Yes, that's really good point. Also, it triggers other issues, but we can continue offline. I just want to put the point that that means if I got your view right, if we have a good, great leader, even if the company is in financial distress and all other factors are negative, the leadership of the organization can make it happen and can move it forward compared to another leader with the same situation within the organization, and then they bring it down.
Absolutely true. I mean, this is when I gave the example about Abdullah Nas. I put the book, and this guy, when he went to Saudi Arabia at the age of 15, while he was trying to establish empire, really, few times he almost went bankrupt, and he never gave up. He just tried to survive and find a way. And you're absolutely right. Those are the great leaders, because I mean, imagine now with the pandemic, nobody predicted it. Nobody knew that's going to happen. And the people who have survived it, they must be great leaders for sure. To find a way around it and so on.
Great. Chris, please.
Thank you for your presentations, Ali and Ghassan, and love, really exciting presentations. I think, I'm fully with you in that we're going to see, well, we've already experienced a transformation the sector as a result of COVID, and I think the built environment, as you've both shown, has transformed massively over the last few decades and reshaped the landscape. And I suppose what I like to sort of hear your opinions on how we make use of the current built environment and the digital infrastructure, because I think we have seen it change and it has become smarter, but how we use that to enhance enhance our social space. So I very much see the challenge of the education sector is not whether or not we revert back. We clearly can't, but when we bring people face to face, really, what are we doing with them? How do we really capture that moment and the excitement and use both the digital space and the smart infrastructure? But I'd like to thank you both for your presentations. I think they're very inspiring.
Thank you, Chris. Good to hear you, or to see you, or to hear from you. But you have raised a very, very important issue, and I think good to see you. Of course, I mean, look, I get worried sometimes about the digital space because we have lived it in the university, and I'm sure Chris would have lived the same experience in the UK. We have seen our students deprived of the social space, of the campus life. And this is part of their development, of the skills they should develop, etc. Of course, certain activities, automated, semi-automation to help system, what Dr. Ali has shown us in terms of digitization, could be useful. But the social space and the social setting, there's nothing can replace it. Even this conference, do you want to tell me this conference would have the same impact if we have the physical, if we have the body language, if we talk to each other? It cannot be the same. It cannot be the same. In a very difficult situation, we have to benefit from digital technologies in our industry. We should benefit. I mean, look, AI, Chris, as you know, has been around for 70 years. Modular construction has been around for 60, 70 years. Neural networks has been around for however many years. BIM and 3D modeling. The first workshop on integrated databases was held at Stanford University in 1986. Now, imagine 35 years ago or more, people are still talking about BIM, and I spent ages in the UK looking at BIM, etc. But still, some people don't know much about BIM and about digital models. They don't, and this is reality. So striking the right balance between digital technologies and in what way they can help us. Because I remember when I was in Salford, every time I showed them our digital model and how you can generate quantities, time plans, life cycle costing, everything, a click of a button, people would say, now we're going to lose our jobs. No, I want to create more space for you, maybe a reduction in working days, what happened in the UAE now, 4.5 days and charge of 4 days. You could do something else maybe with your life. But it has to be the right balance. And when I worry, because sometimes people say, you're going to go online now after COVID. Impossible. It could be 90% physical for teaching our students, and 10% some subject could be online. Somebody working can come to university, may do it online. But you want to tell me that the experience is the same in terms of online or physical experience? So all the time, it's striking the right balance, whether it's in our industry, in the built environment, or in our universities, or life in general.
Can I talk to the question that Chris raised? Thank you very much for your kind words. First of all, Chris, I appreciate that very much. I think it's important for us to accept, because this is a reality, that data and digital technologies are part of the fabric of built environment. To suggest that there is this thing called digital twin and there's this other non-digital entity which we call reality or the real world, I think it's a fallacy. It's it's an artificial distinction between these two worlds. We know already that data and technology imbue our everyday life all the time in the way we conduct business without us knowing. I mean, the whole point of good technology is one that is transparent, not one that sort of flashes the LED in front of you every time you want to use it, but one that actually goes on in the background without you noticing. That's proper use of technology. And we get to see this more and more often when predictive services or proactive services go on, which is stuff that we do here in Dubai as well. The idea is to make sure the technology and the data are used, and the AI, if I can make mention of that even, these are going on in the background, making our lives better and different to the extent that we actually raise new questions like ethics and, you know, the AI that's actually helping me do something. To what extent is the data that's underlying it is biased? Actually, it's not helping me. In fact, actually biasing against me, for example, insurance and so on. So all these questions pop up when somebody starts to talk about built environment in the new world that is right now, and of course in the upcoming world, dare I say, the metaverse merging with the virtual world, merging with the real world. Is there any distinction anymore? I would argue with anybody who tries to make a hard distinction. Sorry, it's a long labored response, but I feel quite strongly about this.
Yeah, thank you for really great discussions and bouncing of ideas. We've got still 3 minutes left. I need to make an announcement at the end, but I think Mohammed, please come in.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Ali, Professor Ghassan. To argue the virtue of a technology or a process never worked with the construction industry. For last 40, 50 years, we've been telling the construction industry how quality is important, how health and safety is important, and what have you, even digital, as Professor Ghassan was telling us about what happened 35 years. So we need intervention, and there's a lot of evidence that whenever there's intervention, either from the client or the government, then the industry will take notice, then the industry will change. When Professor Ghassan was talking about leadership and the need for change, but it's those guys who are going to, to stop it, to stop the change. If there is no intervention, maybe the example that Dr. Ali shared with us, I mean, some other parts of the world may not be comfortable with, but it delivered results. So I want maybe the speakers to comment about the importance of external intervention to affect that change.
Can I just mention one point, Dr. Professor Mohammed, because this is very, very important observation and very important question as well. Remember what happened in the past when we were talking about translators in the UK with the BRE and CSTB in France and other lists, because we felt that the academic and industrialists do not speak the same language. They need somebody in between to make sure that things are translated properly to be used. Unfortunately, we're still facing issues like, you're absolutely right, how much we have changed, not that much, I must admit. Now, when you have, let's take the UAE as a good example, in fact, or Bahrain. When you have a strategy, you have somebody who's telling you, I want this to happen, it's coming from the very top, it's funded, it's measured through KPIs, etc. You need somebody to take the lead. When you have like distributed leadership, it's almost, we don't know who the owner, who owns it. Sometimes we said the client or the client representative or the contractor or etc. It's vague, it's fluid, etc. When you have somebody leading it, making sure that it's happening, take my word for this one, it's going to happen. And this is what has been missing. The translators could not do the job, unfortunately, in the past.
Yeah, I have a slightly different take, if I may sort of go off tangent a little bit, but I think also answers your question, but in a different way, which is to say that your proposal, Dr. Mohammed, is that there is such a thing as external influence or external intervention. I propose that actually we can't avoid that these days, in the sense that the idea that there is such a thing as a compartmentalized country or city where there are very distinct boundaries, maybe even walls or borders. This is an old idea, and it hasn't been around for a long time, especially these days with virtual borders, which essentially reduce physical borders to almost an irrelevance. And now people speak, of course, of global cultures, essentially doing whatever you want to do. I'm right now in Leeds, or actually, where am I? I don't even know where I am. I'm somewhere that is shareable. And therefore, there is no such thing as external. It is always external in the sense that everywhere actually influences everywhere else all the time.
Yeah, that's really great sharing of ideas and discussion. We're really very thankful to our keynote speakers in this session, Ali and Ghassan, and all the discussions also and the audience. We are 2 minutes over time, and that's a good thing. That's not a delay, as Ghassan said earlier on our construction projects. I just want to make one announcement, please. We are going to have a session at 4:15 at the end of the 2-track sessions, track 3 and track 4. At the end of them, we're going to have a session about the accelerating innovation research agenda and future activities. We appreciate if you contribute to that session with your ideas and your thinking. We will appreciate it very much. 4:15 at the end of the 2 sessions. Now you can join each of these 2 tracks, track 3 or track 4, and you can switch between the 2 tracks. As Shuaib explained earlier, you can open one and then go back to your Teams environment and go into the other one. The first one will be on hold. You can go back to it as well as you like to attend different presentations. Thank you very much, and we move to the next tracks.
Thank you very much, Professor Ghassan. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Also, I just been chatting to Professor Mustafa Al-Shawi, and I'm sure you know.
Is he your friend?
No, he's not. He's my brother-in-law. Of course, also a friend, but.
My God, Professor Mustafa Al-Shawi is my brother,
Yes,
not my colleague. We worked together for 20 years at University of Salford.
Indeed.
I invited him to Bahrain. In fact, to our last conference, he was a keynote speaker.
Wonderful to meet you.
Can we, Dr. Taha, can we take a picture, please?
Yes.
Is it possible?
Somebody take a picture
for
us.
Okay, can you?
Dr. Mustafa.
Okay, can you stop your sharing of your slides, and then we will be.
I didn't believe the slide, so I want to show it to Mustafa, Dr. Mustafa.
Okay.
I meant deliberately. I left it just.
Okay.
So you can see Dr. Ali and.
So Shuaib, can you make a picture, or Ali?
I've done it.
Okay, all right, great.
Well done. Dr. Ali, how would I be able to, by email maybe, and then I can send you my...
Yes, Dr. Mohammed will be able to pass email between.
Are you based in Dubai? You are based in Dubai?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
I'll arrange to meet you next time, inshallah, when I go to Dubai.
Anytime.